So I know I'm uploading this video later than what some people, or say most people did yesterday. And to be quite honest with you, the old saying goes, better late than never. So I watched the Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince Mcmahon podcast on the WWE Network for only $9.99. And yeah, ironically, my subscription ends effective as tomorrow, but I will be renewing it due to obviously the pay-per-views and a couple other things. But that's about it. But anyway, I watched the podcast between Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and you know, basically, I mean, it's obviously safe to say it was better than Monday Night Raw. Obviously, because Monday Night Raw was not good. It wasn't a good episode, And I think they were more focused on hyping, plugging the fact that Mr. McMahon would be on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast. And obviously, they obviously cared more so about the podcast than the actual weekly episodic show of Monday Night Raw. That's 3 hours long. So I watched it, and I thought it was actually relatively good. That was pretty well done. There were some interesting parts, some funny stuff, some funny, parts. And as usual, for anyone that hasn't seen a little video I did with Chase Oliver 68 about on Thanksgiving night, we talked about the podcast of CM Punk and Colt Cabana's podcast. And I'm sure most of you guys have seen it. It was a lot of fun to do it. Got a lot of good reviews on it, so it was pretty good. We both enjoyed it. So, after hearing that, of course, you have Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, which was advertised, I believe, before, Colt Cabana said, "Oh, I'm having my good buddy CM Punk on, and he's gonna tell all the story of what really happened, Punk's last year in World Wrestling Entertainment." So, and the funny part is, two things. One, obviously, Stone Cold gave a little plug in the podcast, but oh yeah. So it's Colt Cabana's podcast, CM Punk. It's a pretty good podcast, He kind of plugged it in, a little plug in there, but I'm sure Colt's podcast skyrocketed after obviously Punk, and a little plug by Steve Austin on the network will help as well. So, but anywho, it was interesting because you had several topics. You had, and Vince looked scared, because I think he was worried about what questions Steve was going to ask him. Because Stone Cold Steve Austin, the guy is unpredictable. I mean, one of the reasons why the Attitude Era was so big and so infamous is because a lot of the guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin showed their true colors. They showed, they added in some ad-libbing into their character of what they would actually do in that scenario. So, here's Stone Cold Steve Austin, who relatively has a good podcast, but he went out there and he asked questions such as, "Oh, when is Macho Man Randy Savage going to get a Hall of Fame?" Now, Vince didn't say, "Oh, now, this year," but soon. He kept on saying soon, and he actually, I actually believe, Stone Cold actually kind of looked at him like, "You sure about that?" Because I think for about a minute there, Steve didn't really 100% believe in Vince, but they kind of shrugged it off a bit. They talked about, of course, CM Punk very briefly. They talked about him for about a good old, say, minute and a half. Asked him what happened, and asked him if he would work with him again. He said that it was a mutual disagreement between himself because it was best for business and what Punk wanted, basically. He basically hinted what Punk wanted wasn't best for business in his eyes, and that basically he would love to work with CM Punk once again. He's worked with Hogan, he's worked with Steve, Austin, he's worked with Warrior, all these guys that have had, not always the best relationships, after they leave the company. So, and they also mentioned how, obviously Jim Ross was a big part of the reason why Steve went back to work for Vince, because he kind of convinced him to work him back. And then he only slapped him. I think it was like, what was it? 300, was it two? I think he said it was like a $350,000 fine, I believe it was. But anywho, originally it was like 650, and basically Vince's like, "Oh, I have to give you a slap on the wrist," and Steve's like, "Slap on the wrist? You're cutting my hand. You must stop bringing the wrist." But they kind of joked around with that. It's kind of funny. And then they briefly mentioned, of course, about Jim Ross, and Vince didn't really want to talk about Jim Ross. But yeah, I don't think we'll ever work again. I guess obviously that didn't work well. between Jim Ross and Vince McMahon. So they kind of put the fourth wall in some sort of way by doing this, and it was interesting to see. I think for a lot of people who don't watch these kind of podcasts, Jericho's podcast, Steve's podcast, I know Goldberg has a podcast, and all these other, former, professional wrestlers, sports entertainers, they all have their own podcasts now these days. It seems like, hell, even freaking Snooki has a podcast, alright? Oh, God, I don't know why she has a goddamn podcast, but moving on. I got you on. Shut up. I'm sorry. Anyways, and then they also mentioned about guys trying to, in the company that tried to reach that brass ring, the political brass ring, that it took forever for Stone Cold to get it because, Vince wanted him to be the ringmaster. He didn't know what the hell to do with Stone Cold, and obviously later down the road, we all knew what Stone Cold became, when he not arguably the biggest star in the Attitude Era next to possibly The Rock. So, and you mentioned about, Stone Cold mentioned about Cesaro. He's like, oh, I like Cesaro. I think he was a good guy. He did well at WrestleMania. I got respect for him. What happened? And then Vince said that you got to connect with the fans, and he felt like Cesaro had to connect with the fans. And I'm just sitting there going, oh, yes, because you'd rather push someone like Eric motherfucking Rowan than Cesaro. Okay, Vince, go with that. We'll see how long that lasts for. So, and then he also mentioned about, what was it? Oh, they talked about the streak ending. And Austin said he was shocked, that he was just shocked as anybody, what happened, and apparently it wasn't Taker's idea to begin with about according to Vince. It wasn't Undertaker's, Mark Calloway's, again, broke the fourth wall, idea to break the streak. It was apparently Vince's, and basically Taker kind of got the idea of who could be the guy that ends his streak, his WrestleMania winning streak. And obviously he suggested Brock. And he said it was best for business. And he said best for business at the time. And he kind of shooted a little bit at the wrestling, the internet wrestling fans, saying that how Brock Lesnar isn't an attraction. The reason why he's not out there every single night on Monday Night Raw, or he's out there as much as a John Cena or Dolph Ziggler or, hell, even Triple H when, he was the authority figure. It's because what would he be doing? He'd be terrorizing half of the babyface roster. You don't want to see that. He has to be an attraction for everybody. He has to be an attraction. He said attraction, I kid you not, like 5 times in the span of freaking 2 minutes. Like, I get it. I'm sitting here like this, I'm like that, watching him, like, I get it, Vince. He's a motherfucking attraction. You don't have to repeat yourself every freaking time. But anywho, and then they mentioned, what else did they mention? They mentioned about how Vince says that, this is what I don't get about WWE. Vince says that he didn't necessarily supposedly beat WCW. WCW beat themselves. Meanwhile, you have network specials such as the Monday Night Wars keep suggesting, seems like every episode, oh, Vince McMahon became the king because he got this idea of the Attitude Era with Stone Cold Steve Austin, with The Undertaker, with The Rock, with DX and Triple H. And I'm just sitting here going, okay, you're contradicting yourself. Which one is it, Vince? But, anywho, and then it was kind of funny. I forget what they were talking about the last second. They were talking about how when they faced each other and the rivalry, the infamous Vince McMahon, Stone Cold Steve Austin rivalry, and Stone Cold's like, oh, we only got like 10 seconds left to the show. It's like, God damn it. We might as well just said this. God damn it. I own this network. We're going another 15 minutes. I found that kind of funny. I started dying laughter. But overall, it was a good podcast. Very enjoyable. I'm sure you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I hope they continue with stuff like this on the network. Maybe they could put in Triple H. That'd be interesting, having God and Stone Cold talk each other on the podcast. Stone Cold's going to bring up Stephanie. Oh, that's going to be lovely. We took a go my with. She's going to give birth to I hate boots. I hope it's the King of Kings. He's going to be the Prince of Princes. Yeah. Anywho, it was an enjoyable podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And again, I hope it'll be on the network, continue doing things interesting. So what do you guys think? If you guys think, comment down below, subscribe, follow me on Twitter. You all know the deal.